ready?
Whenever you're ready.
Okay. I gave Michelle, I have my little script here if anybody else wants another to see. Then if I start stumbling, Michelle's supposed to be after me, but we're going to be talking about A Share in Death by Deborah Crombie. How many people actually read it?
I did.
Oh, good.
Although I must say I read it so long ago that I have to, my memory will be refreshing on this one.
Maybe, I don't know.
I read it a long time ago, and I mean like 6 weeks ago, but then on my way down yesterday, I had it on Audible, so I thought, I'll just listen to it again. I maybe forgot the
Right.
whole thing again.
Well, I have my Kindle here, so I figured if we forget something, I can like ask it a question. I had the short press bio I was going to read, but necessarily we don't have to.
Read it. I'd like to know more about her.
Okay. New York Times bestselling author Deborah Crombie is a native Texan born in Dallas. She writes crime novels set in the United Kingdom, and her Duncan Kincaid Gemma, I guess that's how you say it, James series has received numerous awards, including the Edgar, Macavity, and Agatha nominations. This particular book, which wasn't my favorite, got the Agatha and Macavity Award for Best First Novel. So obviously better than some. And it's published in more than a dozen countries. She lives in Texas with her husband, animals, divides her time between Texas and Great Britain. She spends a lot of time there because if you've read other books, you know that they have a place where they're set. So she usually has a murder in her mind, you know, and then goes to England and immerses herself in that particular place, like wherever it is that they live, that they supposedly live in there now. Anyway, she, her latest novel was A Bitter Feast, and she's currently working on her 19th, which is supposed to be out by Christmas. I think it's a Christmas setting. She has a blog. She's in a blog with other authors. It's called something, The Reds. I forget what they call themselves, but she's talked about that. It's a Christmas type setting. And this book introduces Duncan Kincaid, a Scotland Yard superintendent, who's spending a week's vacation in Yorkshire in a luxurious Yorkshire timeshare, and his partner, Sergeant Gemma James. Kincaid hopes to hide his profession for a week, and you may have seen that on Goodreads. But the electrocution of a gossipy staff member in the whirlpool blows his cover. So Nash, the local DCI detective chief inspector, wasn't thrilled to have him on his patch. So he doesn't think that Nash is up to the job, and he finagles his way into acting as a consultant. So there was a lot of back and forth in that. He looks into the other guests firsthand, and he sends his partner running out to check on everybody's backgrounds. And it says the other timeshare guests all have unique personalities with enough flaws and secrets to keep the reader guessing until the murderer is finally unmasked. That part was true. You know, I really couldn't figure out which one it was. Kincaid and James find themselves in a determined hunt for a fiendish felon who enjoys homicide a bit too much. So then I had questions. Well, first of all, does anybody have anything to say about what I just said? No? No, you're good.
I thought it felt like it was an old-fashioned story.
It was kind of an old-fashioned story.
It was nice, yeah.
She's, and we're gonna maybe discuss that now. And I said, it's hard to know with the first book, but what is the writing style of the books by this author? And what I found as I was looking around, you know, researching it, is it's a clever variation on the closed circle of suspects of a traditional house party mystery, and means that it refers to a situation for which a given crime, usually a murder, there is quickly established a limited number of suspects. Each has credible means, motive, and opportunity, which means they were there, I guess, or could have been there. In other words, it's known that the criminal is one of the people present or nearby the scene. The crime could not have been committed by some outsider, by some method that they figure out that it couldn't have been. The detective has to solve the crime rather than searching for a totally unknown perpetrator, like now when we have DNA and stuff like that, which they actually do too. And they mention Agatha Christie and Ellery Queen as that type of a murder mystery. So it is an old-fashioned,
Yeah.
like you said. And many of them are. I think that they progress. She's been writing them for whatever, 20 years or something. They've progressed them to where, you know, some of it is situational. And then on the website where I sometimes follow them, the author herself in April said about her style. She said there's also the issue of having two equal detective protagonists who are no longer professional partners. She said, in A Bitter Feast, I saw this by having Gemma, Duncan, and Doug in my books. But as soon as I really get my steam up, it's time to switch to another character. She said, I couldn't give up Duncan or Gemma or any of the other viewpoints that are there. She said, but juggling can be a challenge. So they are busy. They are really busy. I don't know that she really loses anybody. And you all might have a different opinion on that. She said, the one that's coming out, Melody and Doug, no, that was the one that was just out. In Garden of Lamentations, Duncan and Gemma had two entirely different cases. And she said her editor said it should have been 2 books. So, you know, sometimes it could be a little bit too busy. In some of the novels, Gemma has the official case and she has to find a way for Duncan to help out, which sometimes when you read it, they say, well, this isn't really ethical. And probably it's not, but it is fiction. What do you think about that? What she's saying, that this is what she does. In later books, does it get too, those of you who have read later ones, do you think
Well, I
it
have
gets
not,
too
this
busy?
is the only one I read, and I'm interested in reading or listening to more. And I wanted to know more about Gemma, but then of course it's only book 1, and I'm gonna
Right.
have 19 more books I can read around the many
Right.
series to find
Well,
out
with the
about
one
her.
that's
And
coming.
I was intrigued a little bit by how he used her. And at times I was a little offended by that, well, he's on vacation.
And he's calling
the guy
her
is
in.
involved in all this exciting stuff, and he keeps calling her to go and do all the grunt work.
Yeah, right.
So I was just, you know, that was something that I'll look forward to hearing in further books, how their relationship.
Do you have more of her books in here?
I believe throughout the region we do. I don't know that we have all of them, but I
No,
think
but some of them.
I
On
think we
Kindle,
do.
because I've read a lot of them on Kindle here.
the Overdrive. Okay.
Yes,
Oh,
on
on
Overdrive.
Overdrive, yes.
I think I said that there
I
might
think
be
that's true.
12 of them.
I can find out.
Is that possible? Something like that.
And then I have Audible, which I pay for, but these are included books, so they don't use up my credits. So,
And I think that, you know, things definitely progress. I mean, in later books, I've read where people say, you know, they're not very good parents because they're always going off and leaving the 12-year-old in charge of the little hyperactive child who is hers, and then that's his son, and through a complicated set of circumstances. I like the complication from it, but maybe everybody doesn't. You know, it's not just, oh, I know what's going to happen next, because you don't.
a lot of variables.
There are a lot of variables, so it kind of keeps your mind to it.
I was intrigued, and maybe some of you that are better world travelers, I've never been to Europe, about the timeshare, because I thought timesharing was a fairly recent in my lifetime development here. You know, we had a timeshare for a period of time and stuff. And so I was interested that her setting was a timeshare. And I just wondered, has that been going on in Europe for years and years? Is that typical? Or
It
is that-
may, I don't know. It may be. It looked like it seemed to me that it was a different type of, it wasn't really a different type of timeshare though, was it? It was a week long. those people weren't there forever, were
But they
they?
weren't in some brand new resort, you know, they were in a really classic,
Something like
interesting
that.
old
Yeah.
house.
Older
And I
house.
thought, oh, is that a,
Much different than here.
yeah, here they're always top of the line resorts.
You know, when you think about it, a lot of those places over there, those big old tremendous homes, they petition them off and sell them as condos and things like that. So maybe that is a, you know, if you have a pretty setting, maybe that is an option for them to let people buy in.
Maybe,
Well, I
maybe.
just appreciated it then for the plot. I thought that was a very interesting way
Right.
to set up the closed circle for the plot. Because I really enjoyed that. It took me a while to sort out the different characters and ages and, you know, the perpetrator was not introduced, you know, right away. And so I sort of had to go back and review that. Who was that? Not trying to do a spoiler, but I had to go back.
I
and-
know.
Yeah, I
Well,
did
what
too.
do we know about this particular character?
In Europe, though, they're real big on swimming pools,
Uh,
because I rented a house and there was a pool in the house. But, you know, in this resort, they had a swimming pool.
They did.
So, but the Germans love their pools, hot water, cold water,
Uh-huh.
you know.
But
Okay.
inside, because outside you freeze to death if you want.
Right, yeah, and in that house I rented in Germany, while I was a teacher there, it was an indoor pool too. So,
Mm. So this one was an indoor pool.
yeah, so but they're big on pools.
A lot of the housing, as I read some of these books, and not just this series, other series, it's a lot different than we do. When they talked about what we would call a project, I guess, they call it something else. I can't even remember what they were. I have to go and look things up sometimes on the internet. Like, what in the world are they talking
Yeah, not
about?
colony, but it's like a,
What do they call it? It's not a project. They live in, like,
I did mention it, I can't.
it's like the county owns it,
mhm.
only they don't say county, you know?
Subsidized housing.
Tenant housing.
And it's not even that. It's not, and I can't think of what it's called. But, and then there's different degrees of that, because some of those big houses that they, like, in the one that I'm reading now, I'm like the next to the last book rereading, but it's a garden. The houses all surround a big garden, a community garden, which I'm not sure we have anything like that here either. But then some of them have been resold. One of the ladies was born there and her parents were born there. But then other people, they've been resold and they're like what we would call a condo, I guess. So there's different people living there. And then some of them are subsidized housing. So they live very differently. I guess it's somewhat socialistic, I guess.
Well, look what has become so popular in this country. What do you call it? One bed and breakfast. What's the other thing?
oh, yeah.
Airbnb.
I know.
Oh, yeah. And so that's all. A lot of that might be based on what they've had for a long time in I'm gonna say Italy, but I meant in Europe.
In Europe.
Yeah.
It could very well be. Some things are very different there.
Oh, row houses? Was it row houses?
council house.
Well, the row houses, they call them something. They don't call them row house. My father always said,
Row
I grow, you know, my sister,
It depends, some road houses, if you ride the train, it's like real trashy. and you can
Right,
tell that.
yeah.
But then if you go like around Windsor, they have these row houses and they cost a small fortune.
Yeah,
It's like
different
a
townhouse.
location.
Yeah, really.
what are they, but they call them something too. They call them, not garden, but they call them, they don't say row house like we do. I forget,
They're very
But
small.
But they're
terrace-
connected,
terrace
huh?
housing.
terrace housing. And I had to look up what is terraced housing actually. Is it on a terrace? Is it what the hell? No. It's houses that are connected. And it's like a row house. But some of them are big mansions,
Yeah.
particularly in the middle of, you know, the cities and everything. So there's a whole lot of different layers when you're reading these books of things that are new to us, I guess.
That's why it's interesting to read.
Yeah.
a
It
book.
is.
So too.
Oh, yeah, and the other one that we read recently, the Greek Roman thing, it just sort of puts you into a whole different.
Right.
It does. It does. It does put you in a different, like, wondering about those things. So, so the one that she talks about, you know, that she's working on now, which nobody's going to want to skip ahead to 19 except me, maybe. But she said that the book in progress, the official case, is Duncan's, and she needs Gemma to play an important part too. Duncan calls her in at the beginning of the investigation because she and Melody, who's her sergeant, are working on a knife crime task force, and a murder is a stabbing. And then a little later, we find that the victim has a connection to some other family friends, Wesley and Betty, who are in other books. So they do kind of mesh in together there. And there's continuity that way, I think, because then you're not every time just meeting Duncan and a whole new set of criminals, you know, per se. I guess there's some continuity for me anyway.
Now, is it important to read in order, or can you read out of order and still?
I review sometimes. So I went back and looked just because I said I wasn't sure. I think the first one I reviewed was like book 10. And I was able to get right in it. But then when I went back and read this one, it was like, oh, is that it? You know, because I think they get more complicated and intense. But I don't think that you have to read. If you kind of have an idea in your mind, if this isn't a spoiler, that they get together, you know, and they're together through the coming 19 coming up, then I would say whatever one you want to read.
Oh, okay.
I think,
That's what I was looking at. What should be the next one?
right, I forget what the next one is.
Oh,
Something.
hang on, I can find
All
it.
shall be well, or now may you weep. Are the three that are listed in the back of the book.
Oh, okay.
Same book.
There are 18 altogether currently, and let me see, I can tell you which one's number 2.
I wonder if somebody from England was to read this, would they know right away it was written by an American author? You
Oh,
know,
that's
they
an interesting
Interesting
point.
Yeah.
question.
Tell by the way, you know, the language is used or the way something is described.
They could very well, and I've read some people's reviews because I look at them sometimes on Goodreads and stuff. They'll say, well, you can tell, you know, that an American wrote. Well, the book American Dirt, I saw some bad reviews for that because some people said, you know, this was not a Mexican woman. She doesn't really know what it was like, you know, therefore it put them off completely of the book. So I would think that that can always be the case and probably could be the case here. I mean, with American Dirt, I didn't think about that until I got to the end and I thought that's how it was, you know, but I guess you do have to know a little bit about the author. You don't have to know a little bit, but you have to know where they might be coming from.
The second one is All Shall Be Well.
Okay.
I forget which one, and I forget. They get closer as a work couple as they go along. But since I went to 10 and then went back and started again, because I really liked them so much, that I kind of skipped around for what the library had and tried to read them in some sort of sequence. And I was fine with it. So.
I was interested in the children's characters, that he had the pair of little kids and then we had the teenager and then the teenager that wasn't there.
Yeah.
And I was trying to figure out if they were accurate portrayals of
How
those
life,
age groups.
how life is there.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I'm not sure how accurate some of it is, because like some of the later ones, well, I don't want to be spoiler, but you know, that how they all fit into things is kind of odd sometimes, but yet, yes and no. You know, my family is probably a little odd too. So then I said, you know, do you think this is a definition of cozy or traditional mystery?
I think more of a cozy, well, to me, this read like a cozy mystery.
It was a cozy mystery. And I think they stay or traditional, which is that there's only so many people that it can be. Like in this case, it was people who were in the timeshare or connected to people in the timeshare. Because he immediately sent the trusty sergeant out, you know, to look up all their family. Because, you know, the possible people who came in and murdered somebody could be somebody in their family.
I think it was kind of interesting that Duncan Kincaid had a hard time keeping himself professional. Because being a single guy, the women were kind of wanting to draw
Right.
him in to their personal life.
Right, and I think he kind of liked that one.
He liked the doctor.
Yeah,
He was hoping she wasn't gonna be there.
Yeah.
and I think that Gemma wasn't real thrilled about him, you know, liking that person. And in either the second or the third book, I think she wasn't either. You know, as you go along, eventually they kind of settle into each other, you know. But, you know, it still does happen. And, you know, and the child raising, you know,
I'll
because,
be interested to see, now you piqued my interest on that one.
well, you know, they even say, well, I've seen some reviews where people say, they just go, you know, they go off to work and leave the 12-year-old who's his son, but he didn't know at this book that that was his son.
Oh.
So like, there's layers of complication, there's layers of things that are different, which,
In England, they do that. In England, you know, single women will date, you know, military Americans, and they won't have babysitters. They'll just leave the kids at home and go off.
right, and that obviously is the case because,
there's nothing to them.
right, every once in a while, you know, she'll say, gee, you know, I hope somebody's home to make dinner for, you know, the 12-year-old and the little one, but, you know, they're both off on a case somewhere, and, you know, in some ways it interferes. It's not something that probably you could do here, or if you did, you'd be frowned upon a little bit.
CPS.
But a neighbor,
Yes.
they live closely, a neighbor, you know, will pop in and watch them or
Right.
something like that, because they live so close together. But that's common, to just leave a child, you know, and go off for a few hours.
Mhm.
So, no, we couldn't get away with it.
No.
Are you the person responsible for, are you the one that suggests that we read this? Because it was a very good suggestion if that was you.
Yes, it was me.
Yeah.
Actually, we thought that we were, maybe she offered to come Zoom for the meeting, because I asked her if she had questions for this one, because we were going to be reviewing this, and she said, oh, well, maybe I could come Zoom and answer some questions. She said, send me an email. Well, then she never got back to
No,
us.
she never got a return.
Oh, okay, that was-
But if she's all busy on the next book, you know, I don't know, maybe there isn't time, and who knows, you know. I
Well, the
don't know.
character that intrigued me in this book was the manager, Cassie, is that her name?
Yeah.
I mean, she was the one that I couldn't quite figure out.
Oh,
because
yeah.
They really expressed she expressed her personality. And they were two really pretty different personalities, I
Very
thought.
guarded about a lot of things. You only saw certain surfaces, I guess. It was
Yeah, but then she was having these flings in the mansion or the private cottage. I thought, I was just really having trouble pulling that character together.
Yeah, and I wasn't quite sure, even reading it the second time, why he murdered or why whoever it was that murdered, I can't even remember who did it, but some of these people really didn't need to get murdered.
Yeah,
Just like they asked the wrong question, or, oh, I didn't really mean, I was just gonna knock her out, but then she was, you know, kind of fragile, or it's
I
like,
think
well,
the manager was too secretive, and she did things, she was very private, and she wanted to do things on her own and not broadcast anything. And I think that's what got Sebastian into trouble, because,
he was,
you know, he was very wanting to know everything, and she wanted everything to be quiet, you
mm,
know, just do her own thing. And so I think she resented Duncan Kincaid.
well, everybody resented Duncan, I guess.
Well, some women really would have liked to date him. I
Yeah,
think.
they probably would have, but,
Yeah, but Sebastian got a little too snoopy, which was
Oh, yeah.
his downfall, basically, because he was gathering information on the guests, which was probably going to lead up to blackmail at some point, even though he hadn't done it yet. But otherwise, why would you do that? You know,
Yeah,
why
there
would
had to be
you?
a reason. It's phenomenal.
Right.
Maybe the manager was just too secretive and having these little flings and everything that maybe wasn't quite professional.
Well, she probably played one person against another.
Yeah, so, yeah.
I mean, maybe sexually, maybe her relationships too. Like, did she have a relationship with Sebastian too? Yeah. And a
No,
couple,
not Sebastian.
She didn't?
No.
oh, okay, I wasn't
They
sure.
don't, they didn't like each other.
Oh, okay.
She could have wrung his neck. She wasn't really a complicated person.
Yeah, because I would think a person in her position would be a people person.
You think she
very
would be?
forthcoming and trying to link
Yeah,
people together at their little cocktail hour and stuff, and I just was having trouble
Or at least pretend to.
figuring it
Yeah.
out.
Miss Congeniality.
Yeah,
It wasn't on there.
Not her.
I don't know, maybe that's something about England too.
And then a lot of the guests were returning guests, they come
Right.
back every year, so.
Right.
If you thought that it was a cozy versus traditional, why was that?
I guess because I feel like the cozy mysteries are, always had that kind of setting or something, you know, like well, I guess there was like no main character, like a caterer or a bookstore
Right.
or something, but it didn't seem quite as dark to me as like a traditional.
That-
It felt just a little kind of light still, which was, it was an enjoyable read. but
That's why
just-
I think I enjoy them, because they don't leave me with a terrible feeling. Like this wonderful person is dead. There's a lightness to it somehow. And some of that has to be the writer's style. It has to be.
Mhm.
You know, that they walk away from some of the feelings of it. I don't know.
It's not that gruesome and you don't get all
No.
the gory details. And
No, because sometimes the gruesome, gory details are, whew, you know, I can't deal with this right now.
And again, I think that what I viewed as being cozy was, it pretty much was centered around that physical location, that neat old house. And it seemed a little bit intrusive when Gemma would bring in information from
Right.
the outside, like, oh, what's that about?
What was that about?
Yeah.
Even the village that they went to, they talk about, you know, it's really quaint and cozy, so I guess it just kind of all seemed to fit so well.
And they talk about that in the blurb that I brought in. Well, not the question that I brought in. The detective has to solve the crime from the pool of suspects, which they say, like Agatha Christie and Ellery Queen, which some of that goes almost back to being Agatha Christie does, kind of like a cozy.
I read Agatha Christie back when I was a teenager, so I haven't read any. of
No,
her
I haven't read any
recent
for a
stuff. I don't think
while.
I've ever read any Ellery McQueen.
I don't think I've read Ellery. My younger sister is on an Agatha Christie kick right now. And she ended up giving me an Agatha Christie book for my birthday.
Are they
That was
cozy?
published the year I was born.
Really?
This particular book, so I just thought that was interesting.
And are they cozy?
I haven't read them.
Oh,
She
okay.
gave it. to
I
me.
see.
I haven't read it, and I haven't read Ellery Queen. I was trying to think, was there a TV show that was Ellery Queen?
I think
That's
so.
when I was really like early teenager, that I would have felt really cool that I was watching a mystery on TV without my mother
I
knowing.
know.
Well, have you read like Annie Mary Higgins Clark?
Yes, I've read all
Yeah, and
that.
hers are a little bit like a little more twisted. You know what I mean? Like
A
they're
little
bit
scarier.
darker,
A little
like
darker.
really
My husband
scarier.
loves his books.
Yeah,
He does. I got him some more.
or Stuart Woods. You know, like his are.
Well, that's who my husband liked it. For me, those are so predictable and so formulaic. That finally, after about the sixth one, I said, you know what, I'm not. You always got them.
yeah.
And you had them all the different formats. You know what, I'm not gonna. bring that one.
Two
They're a
two
little
more
creepy
interesting,
though.
two more interesting characters with Penelope and Emma.
Yes, I enjoyed that.
Yeah, and Kincaid couldn't figure out what's what with these sisters. And then when Penelope came up dead, I go, what?
Yes, that shocked me. That murder, I thought, what? She was a real innocuous character. Why would?
And that one didn't need to die, I don't think.
No.
I think she was just collateral. I think I mentioned the Mackenzie sisters. That was their
Yeah.
name.
Yeah.
So what were the thoughts about the Mackenzies?
Kincaid couldn't figure them out.
No, I'm not sure I could quite figure them out. One of them was controlling,
Yeah.
but the other one felt she was slipping, forgetting
Scattered,
things,
a little scattered, yeah.
that'll get scattered. And
Maybe
And
it
her
was a-
sister reinforced that in her.
Right.
So I think Penelope began to feel
Yeah,
inadequate.
she was, and
right,
but Kincaid liked her. He
Yes.
liked Penelope.
I know, and he was really upset about that.
Yeah,
It
we
was-
couldn't figure out why she died.
Yeah,
What caused it. Yeah.
and then later when,
First, she probably saw what's his name.
Eddie or whatever.
Oh, yeah.
That's the only thing I could figure, because she was gonna tell Kincaid, but she was interrupted and never got around to it.
Yeah, she was so shy. She didn't, because her sister was so dominant.
Mhm.
What can I tell him? Can I tell him the right way? What do you think about me? So, but I thought that was interesting, those sisters.
You're talking about the whole thing. I'm almost embarrassed, but I say I watched this. I found it some weeks back. Perry Mason.
Oh, yeah.
And he's on every night.
Oh, I did watch him. Perry Mason, I did watch as a
What?
young teenager. I did watch
Always
this,
on
yes.
my house, always.
And then my daughter tells me that later on, he ends up in a wheelchair. I kind of remember that being on. And I looked, and they're in 1950, 50-something. Right now, the ones I had on last night, I think are 1965. So that's how far back Perry Mason goes. But I have to
Do
tell
you have any
you,
idea, I'm sorry to be off topic. Where do you watch that? I would be curious to tune it in now.
I
as
have
a
DirecTV, and
yes,
it's
75-year-old
it's
and see what I think of it.
323 in DirecTV.
Okay, thank you. That's,
But it's, yeah, I don't.
I'd be curious to watch the episode now
But
and
it
see what
sounds-
my reaction would
I
be.
wouldn't tell anybody I was watching a thing that old.
well, I
But
think
now
that,
I just wanted, but I think I've probably seen them all because they're repeats now. But he never got to the wheelchair yet, so I don't know when that happens.
That was Ironside, is that right? Didn't he have another show and it was
Oh,
Ironside?
yeah, I think you're
That-
right.
Yes, I think
Wheelchair.
that's what I'm thinking. I didn't think Perry Mason himself, as a fictional character, ended up in a wheelchair, but that was the next one, I think,
When he
was
came out.
the same actor.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yes,
yeah.
Yeah.
Somebody,
Yes, yes. But it wasn't the same character, it wasn't Perry Mason as a wheelchair, it was
I
a
don't
new
know.
character.
I think that's correct.
Yeah.
My mother was in love with him.
Yes.
My grandmother was.
I'll tell you, he goes through a lot of different sizes.
Ah,
Sometimes he looks normal, other times he's just a big guy, But, my daughter told me, she has this daughter has a wonderful memory. She said that it's based on a real case when he ends up in a wheelchair. It was it happened to some lawyer from somewhere, and then they based that, what did you say it's called? The next
Ironside.
Ironside. That's based on this real case at one point.
That would be interesting.
Yeah.
I think they weren't they weekly series or something
They were,
way back when?
Yes, yes.
30 minutes, yeah.
Yeah.
So that is why I'm intrigued to find out more about Duncan. That's why I'll read more of the books, because I do want to know more about him, because this was an
He is-
interesting
yeah.
introduction.
And I think he is an interesting character.
Yeah, yeah.
He,
And so much of what they developed about him was this antagonism between him and the
Nash.
chief inspector general,
Yeah,
whatever the
but,
heck he was.
Duncan was better educated
well, the
Nash
Scotland Yard, I think
And
that they
higher
were,
ranking.
and higher
Right.
ranking in Scotland Yard.
I think they were mostly college educated, so they
Yeah.
resented that.
That's right, yeah, very much so.
Probably, and I know this is a stretch, but a little bit like what's going on in Elizabeth City.
Mhm.
You know, there's that, where I come from in South Jersey, there's like the county, and then there's your local police department, and they are at cross purposes like that, which is what I see happening here. And some of it has to do with, well, my people don't do that, And Scotland Yard was kind of above all that.
Yeah.
Who was Nash's, the guy that was underneath him?
Ransom, what was his name?
It started with the
Reg.
R.
Yeah, but he
He was nice. He was,
Rustin. Rustin.
he
Yeah.
were on top of it, and
Yes.
Duncan liked him.
Yeah.
Because I think Nash
Well, Nash wanted to say, this is what happened and we're not going to explore it.
Right, he wasn't
And move on,
open-minded
yeah.
about anything.
No, because there was something about a tissue or something, or it had blood, a
Yes,
hanky
the
or something that had blood on it.
The
Yeah.
kids were using as a corral.
Yeah, so he just had preconceived ideas and that was it, you know.
And part of it had to do with that he wasn't going to let this outsider come in and from Scotland Yard and tell him what to do.
Let's
And
just shut this down right away.
And that will be a theme through most of the books, because Scotland Yard is always like in charge, you know, and,
Yeah.
and,
Oh, yeah.
and they have, well, even if they're not in charge, you know, they have people above like Duncan, who somebody came in here and said, well, Duncan,
Listen to him, yeah.
yeah, you have to listen to him and he knows what he's talking about. So the guy had to like suck it up, you know?
It's like our FBI.
Yes, yes, it is. Or the FBI, the national FBI over the state SBI, the State Board of Investigators or anything, the hierarchy. He's in a higher echelon,
Mhm.
Duncan is.
Yeah.
And she was also in, because she worked for him, you know, she was in Scotland, I guess she was in Scotland, yeah. She ends up not being, I mean, at some point in time, they move around in where, who they work for and time off for children, and it just, don't let me spoil anything, but there's a lot that you can continue to read, and, you know, it's going to be very different. And in terms of that, one thing that I've heard it said that it's each title in this series has improved and grown in scope. More in-depth characterization, a personal sense of place, which is something that others do that. This author does that. That's a personal sense of place has to do with each mystery I found that has to do with that place. It's almost like this is how people do things here. This is how we do it here. And it's different there. And so that makes it multi-layered. Anybody who's read more than one, what do you think? Do you think that the subsequent novels are each different from the other because of the sense of place?
Has anybody read more
No,
than this? I mean,
no,
I
it's
don't
the
think,
first
I think you're the only one that's read more.
Yeah.
So then the next question I was going to ask was, each title in the series uses a different area of UK as a theme. And what was this one? The Yorkshire Dales.
Yeah.
And that's where the final scene happened, in those falls that were supposedly, and the Yorkshire Dales is Harriet, right? James Harriet.
He was mentioned, yeah, in that book.
Yeah, his book. So like that's supposedly the flavor for that one. I didn't get a big flavor for that, but they did mention it. And when he went into the shop in the town, they sold him the book, you know, so he was going to read about it. In further books, they live at some point in time in Notting Hill. So some of the books happen in Notting Hill, which is, and supposedly in England, particularly in London,
You hear of that.
you hear of that a lot.
Yeah.
City.
Oh,
Yeah, within the
okay.
city. And there's other places that are more ethnic, another type of ethnicity in there. And that setting is played up. So what she says is that she spends a lot of time in England. She splits her time in England. So I guess part of it is that they stay there and she gets a flavor for that because the characters are different.
Well, they even say in England, there's different accents depending on
Right.
where you are, like in our country, you know, so yeah, I could see how it could be completely different depending on what part of the country
Right,
you're
You
in.
are.
And like Wales. I
right.
mean, there's even a whole different language for, you know, the Welsh language, so, you know, it's,
And Duncan himself came from further north in England. And at some point, they go to visit his parents and his buddy who was in the police department there. It's very different there. It's very different from where he's from. Like there's things that I've never heard of. Like there's a canal system that goes through there. And the people live on these long boats or narrow boats, they're called. And they actually set each mystery in a place. in, mostly around London, but, you know, in that part of England. But some of the other ones, I think that they said that 19 is going to be someplace else.
Does she, talk to Scotland Yard? I mean, when she goes over to England? Kind of to get an
I
idea of
guess-
how they operate there.
Yeah. Immerse yourself in.
Yeah, I would think she probably has some sort of a contact. I don't know that I looked at that before, but it would be interesting to look at that. Does she talk to people like that there? And usually in the author's notes, it probably will say something. Like,
That's what I was looking to see,
thanks
if
to
there
my-
was an acknowledgement somewhere, but.
Yeah.
thanks to my contact,
Mhm.
Harry Smith, you know, this is how they do it in Scotland
Yeah,
Yard.
because most people, when they like to learn something, when they read this, so
Right.
they immediately Scotland Yard. Oh, okay, well, how do they do this? Or how do the detectives come out and interview or something?
Well,
like
in the other books too, not in this book, where at the end they talked about the falls and, you know, at some point that was about Harriet, James Harriet, the Yorkshire Dales. What was I gonna say? Lost my train of thought. The theme, at the beginning of each chapter, she'll have like a paragraph or two relating to what you're gonna find like in the next couple chapters about that area. You know, about that particular area, how it came, because there's one of the areas that one of the books is about is on the river. Is it how do you say it? The Thames? The Thames. And that ships used to come all the way up and dock right in the middle of the city. So like the factories were right next to it. And she'll go in there. She does spend a lot of time there, you know, and they'll tell you this happened, you know. They'll have a quote from someone important who talked about that area. So it immerses itself more, not so much in this book. So this book was a little arid, you know, as far as the things that you might learn and that are interesting about London and England and stuff like that. But I guess, you know, that happens.
You know, another tie-in, if you're interested in James Harriet stuff, is it was on PBS, All Creatures Great and Small. It was
Yeah.
on there. It was really good. It was very
And that is the
Yeah.
thing that
Mm.
Deborah Crombie had said to me. She said, well, for one thing, I told Michelle, I said, I don't think it was her favorite book either, because she didn't know any questions. And she said, but, you know, All Creatures Great and Small is on PBS now. Your book club could go look at that. And Michelle was like, well, I'm not sure we have the, whatever,
The licensing.
the licensing
yeah.
to go look at that. But I really think it wasn't about that. There wasn't that much about Harriet in there.
Mhm.
I think it was just
Brief
where he's
mention.
from, but I think I have all the books. And one book is about where he lives. It's a picture book, Yorkshire.
Oh, yeah,
He
about
lives and
Harriet.
everything, and maybe that's what he was referring to, maybe it's a picture, you know, picture book.
Probably.
I'm sorry. My husband was the youngest in his family, and he had a brother and sister who were old enough to be his parents, but there were 9 children as it went down. The man who was been my father-in-law, we always said he was from Wales. And my husband's older sister, I said, was old enough to be his mother, really. And she said at one point in time, no, Dad was from Bristol, England.
Really?
We didn't believe it because my mother-in-law, I remember her, she always said her husband was from Wales. Well, we ended up with his old wallet. Guess what? He was from Bristol, England.
Really?
So if you look on the map, we're like almost up together. So I was wondering if, yeah, he was from Bristol, but he might have been working in Wales before leaving to come to the United States. And, but his wife, she was an English parent, Scottish parent, but they had been here for 1 or 2 years. And, but she always said her husband was from Wales.
I wonder if at some point the border changed or something. So maybe they,
Well, if you look on a map somewhere, I don't know if it's a little body of water or what.
it's just a little division.
I think he had, I don't know. And if it wasn't my family, so I guess I wasn't as interested as I could have been. But I remember, I guess my husband saying, he died when my husband was 4 years old, that his father had been a cook in the English army.
So he may have lived
And yet they said he was from Wales, so who knows?
he could have lived in places like that, I guess. Because my great grandfather they were Irish, but he was in the British Army, which my cousin
Yeah.
didn't believe that. No, I think they were freedom fighters. He was actually in the British Army. He came to this country with a British Army pension. But they lived in other places because he was in the British Army,
Mhm.
so probably that could have been the case.
Also in that wallet was his birth certificate and the thing for what a death certificate was supposed to be filled out when that time came by somebody.
Really?
But it
Well, was he
the
still,
birth certificate, and then for years later, when you died, somebody was supposed to fill it in, and that's a death certificate. Anyway.
my husband's
All
parents
still
were,
around something, one of the members of the family.
my husband's parents were from Scotland. Like they came here, met in Philadelphia, and he was born here.
Yeah.
But I mean, his mother wasn't a citizen. So in that case, you notify the consulate of Scotland, when she passed away, I guess. I don't know. Interesting. It's all interesting. I like other places. I don't know if I like places that it's a reach for me to try to understand, like maybe Italy,
Yeah.
like the crime there. Okay, anything else anybody was,
I did enjoy the characters. I'm looking forward to reading a few more of these at least.
It'll be interesting to see how her style, how it.
Yeah,
moves along.
exactly.
That's what
I'm
Yeah.
curious to see.
it does move along. One of the questions I had, and I was taking this from other people's reviews as I was like, what did they say? How the books have improved. And some reviewers have said they improved remarkably, like the third book. So that might be a place where, you would want to jump to the third or the fourth book. Like I said, I started at the 10th book. And then some people's reviews, and these were major reviewers, some of them, and some of them were just people like myself who write a review, that speculate that she had some intention of changing this relationship with Gemma and Duncan. And that was obvious in book 1. Did anybody see it was obvious?
And you could tell Gemma was not upset that he was asking her for her help. I think she really wanted to impress
She did,
him.
yes.
And so I was like, I could see where you were being set up to think that there was gonna
Right.
either be that relationship where they constantly keep missing each other and, oh, the longing looks or really, turn into something, but.
And I think they did do that through a couple, through the first 2 or 3. Maybe by book 3 and going into book 4, you kind of got an idea about that. But the author may have had an idea of changing the relationship to where they weren't just work partners.
Yeah.
And I said there was a statement which is about this one. Despite not wanting to offend the local police force, his proximity to the crimes makes him a witness, and his inquiries annoy at people. Did you see that happening in this book? They were annoyed, some of the
But
locals.
I still picked up, he was trying to be careful.
He was trying to be
He really
careful.
wasn't trying to
And I think
take
some of,
over the investigation.
no, and some of it is about the hierarchy of policing in England that offended people. Like, oh, well, look who's here,
Nash is obnoxious
Yeah.
personality.
I was gonna say,
Yeah.
more personality.
And he
Yeah.
was obnoxious,
Personality
and he was
clash.
probably, Nash was probably lazy.
Right.
He didn't want to follow up on all the clues, where that's something about Kincaid and Gemma. Always, it's like explore the whole thing. And that goes on, like,
But that's the professionalism
Right.
of Scotland Yard.
and that's the part that I'm reading now, like book, 17.
Yeah, but wouldn't it be hard, like Michelle, if some other librarian showed up here and told you how to run the library? You know what I mean? It's
Yeah,
hard if somebody
it would,
comes in.
yeah, you're like.
Say, well,
this is
you
my
know, you're all
spot, you
supposed to
know,
have,
what are you doing?
you're supposed to have masks on in here, you know, and they'll
Yeah,
say,
maybe nobody, well, maybe nobody will.
no, that's what I
to
mean.
Watch the video.
If somebody came in and
Yeah.
said, you know, you're supposed to be, because you do get your backup, you know.
Yeah, it'd be easy to do for sure.
Yeah, and, you know, especially if you take pride in what you're already doing and you think you're doing a good job, and then to have somebody probably younger, more charismatic, higher ranking comes in, just happens to be there and falls into your lap, and now you have to deal with that while you're still trying to, you know, you're probably hoping you can kind of one up them, you know, and say, well, I can solve this mystery, and this is what happened, and we're good, you know, and then to have Kincaid still going, but did you look at this and this, and maybe you should check that, and
And the part about whatever the electrocution didn't, it showed that the minute it hit the water, it didn't electrocuting because it went off, right?
Yeah, like it short
It
circuited.
short circuited.
Yeah.
And he didn't even check that. He said, have you checked to see if, no, we don't need to do that. Of course, that's what happened.
But his subordinate, was, I think, smarter.
He was smarter.
Yeah.
Well, it,
Raskin,
Raskin,
yeah, I think
yeah.
that's his name, Raskin or
I
whatever.
remember Kincaid had found a clue or found out something he was gonna tell Raskin so he could get credit for it.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, I thought that was sensitive of Kincaid.
Yeah.
At least we tried to do it that way.
Raskin said, I like Nash, yeah, let's just do away with, no,
Yeah.
I like
Right.
that Duncan, let's do away with Nash. I know I'm smart.
Well, thank you for the
Yeah,
choice,
thank
because I
you
really
so
thought
much.
it was interesting
You did a
in
really good
terms of
job.
I was
being the
telling
first in a series plus.
what's our book next month?
The next one is Miss Benson's Beetle by Rachel Joyce.
and I didn't get that one. I'll have to try
That's
to.
wild.
That
Yeah.
was, yes, I read that.
It's I'm gonna purchase that on Overdrive, so it should be available by the end of the week.
You
It'll be
are-
on
you are?
Overdrive.
Okay.
Oh,
Yeah,
Because
Miss
I-
Benson's Beetle.
I did look at
Do
it.
that in the library?
I do have a copy. I don't know if it's checked in, but there is a copy. I'm gonna also have it on Overdrive by the end of the week. And then the week after that, we have an extra little meeting if anybody's interested. It is After Alice Fell by Kim Taylor Blakemore. I have a couple copies on my desk if anybody's interested in that.
So has anybody started that?
I have not yet.
No,
Maybe
it's
this
in my
weekend.
stack. I'm
Yeah,
not ready
maybe
yet,
this
but I'm
weekend.
glad to have it.
It's a little, I started it. It's not something you want to read at night.
Oh, really?
This
Thank you
is
for
the
that.
next one?